Imagine two people who did everything the same. Same job, same savings, same nest egg on the day they retire. They invest in the exact same way, and over the next 30 years, the market delivers the exact same average return to both of them. And yet one of them sails through retirement with money to spare, while the other runs out and spends their final years afraid to turn on the heat. Same start, same average return. Completely different endings. How is that even possible? The answer is one of the most important and least understood ideas in all of retirement, and it comes down to a single word: timing. So today, let's walk through the risk that quietly wrecks otherwise well-planned retirements, and, more importantly, how to protect yourself from it. One quick note before we start. This is general information, not financial advice. Everyone's situation is different, and I'll point you to where to get real help at the end. Alright, let's get into it. The idea has a slightly technical name: sequence of returns risk, but the concept underneath it is simple. It's not just how much your investments earn on average that matters in retirement. It's the order in which those returns show up. And the reason the order suddenly matters so much comes down to one thing that changes the day you retire. You stop adding money and start taking it out. Let me show you why that flips everything. While you're still working and saving, a market crash is actually your friend. When prices fall, your steady contributions buy more shares at the lower price. And when the market recovers, you're holding more of them. A downturn early in your saving years can quietly make you richer. But the day you retire, you flip from pouring money in to pulling money out. And that same crash becomes dangerous. Because now, when the market drops, you're not buying at the low. You're selling at the low, cashing out investments to pay your bills at exactly the moment they're worth the least. Here's why that does lasting damage. When your portfolio is down and you take out, say, a year's worth of expenses, you have to sell more shares than you would have if prices were high, because each share is worth less. So you're draining more of your nest egg to get the same amount of cash. And every one of those extra shares you sold is a share that isn't there anymore, to bounce back when the market finally recovers. You've locked in the loss and thrown away the rebound at the same time. A big drop in your first few years of retirement can put a hole in your savings that a later recovery simply can't fill, even if your average return over the whole retirement ends up looking perfectly healthy. That's the whole mystery of our two retirees. The one who happened to retire into a few strong early years built a cushion that carried them for decades. The one who happened to retire right into a downturn was selling into weakness from the start, and never fully recovered, even though, on paper, they earned the same average return over 30 years. The difference wasn't skill, and it wasn't the size of their savings. It was the luck of the timing. And this isn't just a theory. Analysts who study retirement outcomes have found that the danger is heavily concentrated in the years right around retirement. In one analysis by the research firm Morningstar, close to 70% of the cases where a retiree ran out of money were ones where the portfolio had already lost ground in the first 5 years. That's why advisors talk about the retirement risk zone, roughly the 5 years before and the 5 years after you retire. That decade is when your savings are largest, and when a bad stretch of markets can do the most permanent harm. Think of it as the fragile decade. You can see this play out in real history. Picture two people who retired just a decade apart. One stopped working in early 2000, right at the top, and immediately walked into the dot-com crash. And then, before they'd fully recovered, the financial crisis of 2008. Their first years of retirement were spent watching their savings fall while they had to keep withdrawing. Now picture someone who retired in 2009 or 2010, at the bottom, and stepped straight into one of the longest bull markets in history. Same country, same kind of portfolio, birthdays only a few years apart, and wildly different retirements, purely because of what the market happened to be doing when each of them started. Neither one earned their outcome. They inherited it from timing. And to be clear about how the math can fool you, two sequences of returns can share the identical average and still end in completely different places once you're withdrawing. A string of returns that starts rough and ends strong averages out the same on paper as one that starts strong and ends rough. But the retiree living through the rough start has been selling into every dip, and there's simply less left to enjoy the strong finish. The average hides the danger. The order reveals it. Now, none of this means the market is your enemy, or that you should be scared to retire. It means you plan for the timing, so a bad first few years can't sink you. And there are a handful of well-established ways people do exactly that. Let me walk through them. The first is simple: keep a cushion of cash. Many retirees hold 1 to 3 years of spending money in cash or something very safe and stable, completely separate from their invested savings. The whole point is this: when the market drops, you don't have to sell a single investment at a loss. You just spend from the cushion and give your portfolio time to recover. You're never forced to sell low. That cushion is what turns a scary market into something you can simply wait out. The second is flexibility. The retiree who gets hurt is often the one who withdraws the exact same amount every year, no matter what the market does. The one who does well tends to ease off a little in bad years, trimming the optional spending, the big trip or the new car, when the market is down, and enjoying more when it's up. You don't have to cut deep. Even small, temporary adjustments in the worst years take enormous pressure off your savings and help them last. The idea is to stay a little bit responsive to the market instead of spending on autopilot. Treat a down year as a year to hold steady, and a good year as your reward. The third is being thoughtful about how much of your money is in the stock market right at retirement. Being 100% in stocks the very day you stop working leaves you the most exposed to that fragile decade. Many people move to a more balanced mix. Still enough growth to outpace inflation over a long retirement, but with enough stability that a single bad year doesn't force painful decisions. It's about surviving the sequence, not chasing the highest possible return. Notice what all three of these moves have in common: a cash cushion, a little spending flexibility, and a balanced mix. None of them requires you to predict the market or time anything. That's the whole point. You are not trying to guess whether a crash is coming, because nobody can. You are simply making sure that if a rough stretch does arrive in those fragile early years, you are never forced to sell at the bottom just to pay your bills. The goal isn't a perfect forecast. It's a plan that holds up no matter what the market happens to hand you. And there's a reason you may have heard of the so-called 4% guideline for retirement withdrawals. That rule of thumb was actually built around this exact risk. It was designed by looking at history's worst timing, the people who retired right before the ugliest market stretches, and finding a starting withdrawal rate that would have survived even those. It's not a perfect law, and we'll dig into where it holds up and where it strains in another video. But its whole spirit is the lesson here. Plan as if your timing could be bad, and good timing becomes a bonus instead of a requirement. So let's pull it together. In retirement, it isn't only how much your investments earn, it's when the good and bad years arrive. A rough patch in the first few years, while you're withdrawing, can do lasting damage that a later recovery can't undo, which is why the decade around your retirement date is the fragile one. But you are not helpless against it. A cushion of cash so you're never forced to sell low, a little flexibility in your spending during down years, and a sensible mix of investments can take most of the danger off the table. And you don't have to build that plan alone. A fee-only fiduciary advisor, one who's paid only by you, not through commissions on the products they sell, can stress test your specific plan against a bad start. If you want one concrete place to begin with the cash cushion, because it's the piece you have the most control over, and it does the most work. Sometime in the year or two before you retire, look honestly at what you'll actually spend in a year, and set aside 1 to 2 years of that in something safe and boring. A savings account, a money market fund, short-term treasuries. It won't earn much, and that is completely fine. Its job isn't to grow. Its job is to sit there, untouched by the market, so that when a bad year arrives, you spend from it instead of selling your investments at the bottom. That single move, money you set aside on purpose, before you ever need it, is what lets you ride calmly through a downturn that would force an unprepared retiree to lock in their losses at the worst possible moment. Because that's the real point. You can't control what the market does in the year you happen to retire, but you can build a plan that doesn't depend on getting lucky. Do that, and a bad first few years becomes something you ride out, not something that rewrites your retirement. And I'd genuinely love to hear from you, because everyone approaches this differently. Are you near retirement, and how are you planning to handle those fragile first few years? A cash cushion, staying flexible with your spending, a more balanced mix of investments? Or is this the very first time you've heard of sequence of returns risk at all? Tell me in the comments. Honestly, hearing how other people near retirement are preparing is one of the most useful parts of this whole channel, and your approach might be exactly what helps someone else feel ready. If this made sequence of returns risk finally click, do me a favor and tap the like button. It genuinely helps other people near retirement find it. And if you'd like more clear, plain English videos on making your money last, consider subscribing. Take care of yourself, and take care of your money.